Hi guys, it's Bill and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be using the Cricut machine to do some bookbinding. For complete transparency, I actually used Illustrator to actually design the template because that's what I use on a daily basis. So for me, that's the easiest thing that I found. Of course, you can use Design Space if you don't have access to Illustrator. The workaround might be slightly different. But for this tutorial, I will be using Illustrator to show you how I designed this, and then also we'll be using Design Space to obviously upload it and to actually cut it. So let's jump into Illustrator and I'll show you what to do. Okay, so here in Illustrator, what we need to do is we need to basically make obviously the template that we're going to use in Design Space to print. Now, I made mine a width of 194 millimeters by a height of 134 millimeters, and that essentially gives us our template. What I did do is I also rounded off the corners, just the two that's on the outermost part of the book, and they were rounded off at 10. It's already set up in millimeters, so I can just hit enter on that. So the holes on here were 3 millimeters in diameter, which is quite small, but the truth of the fact is we don't really need anything bigger essentially. So with this little box here clicked up, linked together basically, so whichever you change in the width will change in the height as well. So we want to make that 3. It's just clicked off and make that 3, and that's going to be our punch holes. You duplicate it 4 times, sorry, because that's the size that we want. In my layers panel, I'm actually going to lock that layer. You can then essentially draw a line there and move that line down, if I can find it. Move that line down and then essentially select everything, and in the align panel here we've got distribute spacing. Make sure it's clicked to selection, and if you click that, it will automatically space everything out for you, so you don't need to worry about trying to sort of like figure out where they go. The only thing you need to make sure is you need to make sure you delete your 2 extra paths, because when you put that into Design Space, it will think that it's something that needs to be cut, which obviously we don't want. The space that I've already got a line drawn here, but essentially that's really quite simple. You just take the line tool and you just start where you want. If you hold down shift, it will snap it and go straight down. The width of that I'm going to put down to 1.25. It essentially doesn't really matter what width you have. Design Space will automatically put it down to a single line anyway, but for best practice it's nice to have it as thin as possible. It just makes it, for me personally, more easier to understand how Design Space is going to basically use it. So I've got my guides on so you can't see them, but if you press Command and the semicolon button or the colon button, that will hide them, and then you can bring them back. So that's spaced out exactly how I want it. Off the top of my head I can't remember what that was, but if I do that, I think it's something like 22 millimeters in space, as I seem to remember. So essentially that is our template done. The only thing that's different is that on this one I have the back page, which actually has a little punch hole in it. And what I simply did for that was I took all of this and I grouped it, and then actually I need to unlock you and actually then just group it again, and then I move that down, and then what I basically did is I made another little punch hole, and this punch hole was 2mm in size, and then I moved that, and then I basically centered it. Now I'm going to center to selection again, and on the panel here we use this one, which is the vertical line, and it's already aligned. But basically if it was up here, you would do that, click the object again, so it knows the parent that it's going to basically align to, and then hit that one again and it will do that. It's kind of up to you what distance you want it from in, basically. Mine was, I'm actually not sure what it was. Let me just grab a ruler. Mine was 2.5 centimeters in, essentially. But you can have it as close as you want. The only thing I would say is you need to be careful that it's not too close, because it could actually end up ripping over time. That would obviously depend on how thick your material is that you're using. I'm using card here that's fairly thick, and I don't think it's going to rip too easily. So I thought that was a kind of like a nice distance, but again, that's entirely your choice. So save that, and what I then did is I saved this as an SVG. Make sure that you don't have anything stray in your thing, so any kind of guides and stuff I'm going to delete. What I do have is my original files in here, and I've got the bottom one that I originally made, and again I'm going to delete that one, and I'm going to delete these because I now no longer need them. I'm going to save that, and then I'm going to go File, Export, and Save as an SVG, and you can basically save that wherever you want. So that's quite simple. File, Save As, and I've already got my one in here, but I'm actually going to save that as an SVG. SVGs are files that Design Space basically use, and they can be scaled up and down as much as needed, and then click Save. And then basically we jump over into Design Space and we upload it from there. Okay, so now we're in Design Space, so we're going to hit New Project. And that's going to bring us to our canvas. Now this is where, if you don't have Illustrator, you would essentially be making your template base. And what we're going to do is we're going to click Upload and Upload Image, and then click on Browse, and then click Upload. I've already got it uploaded, but we can upload it again. That's fine. Ooh, something wrong there. So if we click on Upload and Add to Canvas. Now, as you can see, it's come in, and it's coming quite small. It's come in and everything is black. Don't worry, if you just click on here and then click to white, and then everything comes in. For some reason it doesn't automatically show where the cuts are. You have to change the colour for that to work. Now you'll see here on this one the holes have disappeared. Do not worry, that's fine. Here in your layers panel, if we hide the top one, we'll just concentrate on the bottom one for the moment. The bottom one is obviously our back, and what you'll find is your punch holes are actually just at the bottom, so you can move those up and that's fine. Now what I essentially did, or the way that I set this up, is that you have, first of all, we need to ungroup everything. I think is probably the most important thing to do here. So we have our 2 pages, and the way that I set it up is we've actually got 2 pages, but we're actually printing 2 of the main one per sheet of A4 paper. And then when we come to do the back, we'll print both of these on the same one, so we have the front and the back, because the front is cut exactly the same as all of the inside pages. I've set it up with a score line. You don't necessarily have to do that, but I thought it was a nice touch. As we have the technology to do it, why not? So the first thing we're going to do is we're basically going to print all of our pages, and how we basically do that is we're going to take the bottom one and we're going to hide it, but when you come to print that one, you will essentially print it exactly the same. You just unhide it and then print it. And then this one, I'm actually going to duplicate that again, and that's going to take us to 2. And when we click on Make It, it's going to put it straight on here for us. Now the first thing you'll see is everything is not where it should be. So what you then need to do is, I'm going to delete the top one to save myself a little bit of work. I'm going to select the bottom one and I'm going to attach everything, and then so I don't forget, I'm going to unclick bottom one, second one, and we're going to attach that. So what we can do is we can print these both off now on the material that we're using for that, or we can print it off on this, we can print it off later. It doesn't really matter which one, but I'm going to take the bottom one and I'm going to hide that. I'm going to take this one and I'm going to duplicate it. You can either do that by holding down the Option key, or you can hold it and you can, that's how you want to do it. So you can take that, you can right click and click duplicate, then click on Make It, and you'll see it will go straight into Design Space and it will automatically lay it out for you because everything's... Hi guys, Future Editing Bill here. One thing that I did forget to say when I was making this is the line that we made next to the punch holes in Design Space. When we upload that, it automatically uploads as a cut line, which obviously we don't want. So what we need to do is we need to change that from a cut line to, in our case, a score line if you decide to include it. It's really simple to do. In the top left hand corner, when you click on it, a little box will be there which will tell you that it's what action your machine's going to do. In that case, when I imported it, obviously it was a cut line. So what we need to do is we need to click on that and you'll get a little drop down and it will tell you all the different actions that the machine can do. You want to click on the score line and that's it basically. And then when you go to the next stage, your machine will ask you to put your scoring wheel in. Attached. You don't need to worry about anything. I'm using a 12 by 12 mat, and I'm also using a Cricut Maker 3, and I'm also going to be you can use any mat you want within reason. Either a LightGrip or a StandardGrip mat are the best ones to use, especially the type of paper that I'm using, because it's quite thin. If you use a strong grip mat, you have the tendency to rip your material. So for everything I'm going to be using a StandardGrip mat or a LightGrip mat. And then we click on continue. And our machine is connected. It's now going to ask us what type of material we want to use. For the insert pages, I'm actually just using copy paper, and it's going to ask us to load up the scoring wheel first. Once we've done the scoring wheel, it will then ask us to load the fine point blade. Okay, so now it's going to ask us to load up the materials into the machine. So I'm going to be using a LightGrip mat, and what we do is we take off our protective film and we will load up our material. These are the insert pages that I'm doing, and we line it up to the line and press down firmly. And if you have a brayer, I would definitely use that. I do have one, I just don't have it to hand right now. But essentially we push that down as flat as we can get it, and then we'll take it over to the machine and we will load it up. Okay, so all of my pages have now been cut out, and the last ones I have are on here. When you come to taking your pages off of your mat, the scrap bit can just literally come off straight away. But with these pages, it's actually better to fold the mat away from your sheets. That way you don't crumple anything off. You don't basically curl your pages. Just taking all the scrap bits off there and then just putting them back on the protective film, which you want to keep. You don't want to throw these away because they're designed to be kept. They keep them from dust and stuff getting on them. So removing off all of these tiny little pieces, essentially those are all of your pages for your book. The next part is obviously the bookbinding part. Now I actually put a backing on here, and with that I actually used Elmer's rubber cement. There are different brands available. Sorry, my lighting's really bad because the sun's coming in, but essentially Elmer's glue is what I use for it. It's really good, it doesn't crinkle. This is tissue paper that I picked up from, I can't remember what shop it was now, unfortunately. And with tissue paper, when I did some tests, PVA glue or even gel medium really ripped the tissue paper, but with rubber cement it essentially doesn't. So for this bit I'm actually going to be using wax cotton or wax thread, and this is I think this is like 1 mil, maybe 2 mil. When it comes to how much we want, you want to go 4, maybe 5 times depending on how thick your book is. So now we're going to wax thread this. This is really simple. You don't have to do this part, but it does help with it not sticking basically. So what you do is you just literally take your wax thread and you run it through, or you take your thread and you run it through, should I say. This is the needle that I'm going to use. It's quite a large one. I don't know what size it is, unfortunately. But what we're going to do is we're going to thread that through. So halfway through our pages, what we essentially want to do is I'm going to use my Bulldog Clip for my back. That's going to keep it nice and neat, and then basically halfway through or halfway through the pages you want to go into the, can't really see with this light unfortunately, but you want to go in your fourth hole. Pop that through. You want to leave a couple of inches towards the back and just poke that in. And then what you basically do is you go back to the underneath of your book and you go through like this. And then you move over to your second hole and you pop that through, and then you want to go back up and under and through the other end. And you move over to your second hole, you go back up and under, so that's basically what it looks like. So then now you loop round and you come back through the back or the bottom, and you go back under. So now you've literally looped, so you've gone through and around, so that's all now fully done. And then this part here, you push that back in, back through, and that's now the front part done. So now the hole that you originally went in, you go through that one again, so you're nice and through and tight. Then you go back to your last, or your, which is essentially your last hole, and you go through there. Then you flip round and go back under. If I can get it through. And then what you want to do is you want to take this piece and you want to go back through. Like that. So then the last piece is your last hole here, which is the first hole you went in. And now what you need to do, if you open up your book where you mark your pages, you have your piece of thread. Now this bit is quite tricky. So what you want to do is you want to go back in through your hole, but come out where the thread is here. So let's move that piece out the way, and you want to go in, and it's quite tricky for you to see, I appreciate that, but essentially what you want to do is you want to go in and you want to come out here like this, pull through, and that's it. That is essentially the book bound. Now what you need to do is you need to take these pieces and you want to essentially tie them off. So that is your book bound. And you could leave it there and it would essentially be done. However, as you may remember, what I did is I made that little hole in the back. That is going to be for the Bulldog Clip to go in. That goes back into there, which I've done the wrong way. That go, or have I? I don't suppose it matters, does it? So that goes in there and that goes back through. Okay, so once that's through, you want to level these pieces up, like so. Take those, loop them through, so you have a loop, and then that is long enough to reach to the back. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my Bulldog Clip, I'm going to take this through, and I'm going to essentially tie it off in a knot. And that's tied off, and then that reaches to the end. That then clips onto there to keep it nice and neat. And then when you want to use it, that piece clips off and clips on the end. There you go, guys. That is your book bound using traditional bookbinding with a Cricut machine to cut out all the holes in the pages for you. Thank you so much for watching. This is my first tutorial I've ever done, so it's probably a bit ropey, but please do like, share and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.